Choosing Family by ginnyrules27, Chapter 11. 4 weeks had gone by since Lord Hades had used Mal's middle name, and the incident had been living in Mal's head ever since. She replayed it over and over again, even when she didn't want to, as if looking at it from all possible angles for something that she was missing. Why had Lord Hades even cared? He wasn't the type of villain to worry about what others did, or about the welfare of a child. After all, if the stories Gaston Jr. had spread around the kids of the Isle were true, Lord Hades was one of the few villains to probably target a child. Probably the first one, really, considering he was a god. Maybe that's why Beneficent doesn't like him, Mal thought as she dropped off the order at the restaurant. After all, she prides herself on being an original. Another villain going after a baby, especially a god, would make it seem like she didn't come up with her own ideas. Mal quickly made her way out of the restaurant without saying a word, despite being a little hungry, not wanting Lord Hades the chance to lie to her again. Even if his food was good and the bruise on her arm had healed to the point that it was unnoticeable if her sleeve slid up again, Mal didn't want to take that chance. Instead, Mal started making her way back to Maleficent's. It was horrible, but Maleficent was always horrible. She was always cruel. She was always consistent. Consistency wasn't something often found on the Isle, so when you found it, you tried to make the best of it. Lord Hades had been consistent. He was honest, until he wasn't with the deal involving Mal's middle name. Something, though, caught Mal's eye as she walked past the window of the restaurant, and she paused, though she couldn't tell you why. Lord Hades was getting food to the front of house, ready for the lunch rush, though Mal didn't understand why. Hardly anyone ate in the restaurant, preferring to eat on their own turf. Why hasn't he tried to escape yet? Mal wondered as she watched through the front window. After all, he's a god. Wouldn't that be powerful enough to counter the barrier that's mainly fairy magic? I mean, the only other fairy powerful enough to trap a god would be the Blue Fairy. But Maleficent always said she was more of a neutral party, preferring not to get involved on either side. That was probably the nicest thing Maleficent had ever said about another fairy, and she hadn't actually said it to Mal. Mal had just happened to be in the room while Maleficent was plotting. One of the goblins had made the foolish suggestion of Maleficent reaching out to the other fairy folk in Auradon or the moors for help. That goblin hadn't been seen from since. Mal tilted her head as she studied the god of the dead, who still seemingly unaware that she was watching him. She wasn't going to lie. There was something familiar about him. Obviously she knew him since they had a partnership, but that wasn't what she meant. She couldn't help but feel safe when she was around Lord Hades, like no matter what happened, he'd be there. It was stupid, since she had only really known him for a few weeks, but the feeling was there. And maybe, was it a trick of the light? But did Lord Hades' chin look like Mal's? Shaking her head, Mal started to make her way back to Maleficent's, the incident from a couple of weeks ago playing in the back of her mind. Why had Lord Hades known her middle name? It wasn't like it was a guess either. Bertha wasn't that common of a middle name. Mal knew Lord Hades had said Maleficent had told him, but that just didn't make sense. Maleficent hated Lord Hades with all her power. Honestly, Mal thought that Maleficent might have hated Hades more than she hated Leah, Stefan, and Philip. Oh, sure, she acted as though she hated Aurora, but Mal knew Maleficent still had a soft spot in her heart for her beastie. Or at least, that's what Mal assumed based off of Maleficent's rants and plots. Mal barely heard Aurora's name mentioned. Mal sighed. She wished she could make sense of it. Lord Hades didn't act like adults in the Isle normally acted. He made it so kids had a way of getting food, and made it so it was good food. He had come to her aid when Frodo had cornered her in that alleyway. So why would he treat her like an idiot and lie about how he knew her middle name? There were only 3 people on the Isle who would know that anyway. Mal, obviously, Maleficent, and her father. There is no way Lord Hades is my father. He would have mentioned that when he set up the alliance, or Maleficent would have boasted it to the heavens. She might hate him, but the dragon is so power-hungry that having a daughter who's half god would guarantee her control of the Isle. Not to mention her little rivalry with the evil queen would be over. There's no way Queenie or her daughter could top that. Still, why else would Lord Hades know her middle name? Why would he care about a bruise on her arm? Why would he make sure she slowed down and didn't hurt herself when she was rushing through her food? I need to talk to Uma, Mal thought, and turned on her heel towards Ursula's fish and chips. She knew Uma would be working, but hopefully she'd just be on dish duty tonight. Entering the restaurant that always stunk of fish and seaweed, Mal looked for her friend and ally, scanning the restaurant for a glimpse of that familiar bright blue hair. "Hey, Dragon Breath!" Uma's voice sounded from behind her. Mal had to work hard not to jump. "What you doing here? I thought you were spending most of your time at Lord Hades' place now." "I need to talk to you," Mal said, turning around to look at the other girl, who had her arms filled with dirty dishes. "That is, unless you're busy, Octo girl." Uma chuckled. "Come on, I need to put these dishes in the back. We can talk there. Mama's in the back office, but the door's shut. As long as a customer doesn't start a fight, she never comes out." Mal nodded, and the two girls made their way back into the kitchen, where Uma put the handful of dirty dishes she had been holding into the sink. Said sink was already overflowing with dishes, but no one seemed to mind, considering Mal and Uma were the only two people back there. "Okay," said Uma as she turned back to Mal. "What did you want to talk about?" Mal took a deep breath to steady her nerves. "How did you know Facilier was your father?" Uma blinked, as if not expecting that question. "I asked Mama," she said after a moment's pause. "Just like that?" Mal asked. "You just asked your mum who your dad was?" "Well, no," Uma chuckled. "After I met Dad, he acted weird. Always telling me to make sure I got my cut and trying to get friends on the other side. Plus, Freddie always seemed to be looking out for me whenever I found myself on Dad's stuff. After about a few weeks of that, I asked Mama." "And she told you?" "Not in so many words," Uma said. "So I asked Dad. You know the motto of the Isle. Villains always lie. But Mama and Dad don't really talk to each other much, so it's not like they could match up their stories." Mal nodded. "So Facilier told you?" she asked to confirm. What Uma said. "Yep." Uma nodded and frowned. "Mal, why are you asking about fathers? You never ask about them." Mal shrugged. "Just curious. You're one of the few kids on the Isle who know who both of your parents are," she said. It wasn't worth the risk of it getting back to Maleficent before Mal was ready to broach the subject. "Well, do you want to be curious while you help me with the dishes?" Uma asked with a smirk. Mal chuckled. "Sorry, Uma, but I gotta get going. Maleficent would be happy if I show up late." Uma nodded, and Mal left the kitchen, heading out of the restaurant. There wasn't anyone else she could talk to about their parents. Harry had known about his mother, but talking about Mila right now just made Harry mad. Mal was in a bind, but she wasn't that desperate that she made her crewmate upset. She wasn't that close to Jay that she could ask the older boy about his mum. Jacqueline of Jack and the Beanstalk infamy had been one of the few good parents on the Isle. So, of course, the Isle had to take her away when Jay was 4. Maleficent had already partnered with Jafar at that point, so Mal had hazy memories of Jay walking around Maleficent's castle holding back tears. Besides, Jay's a bit too dangerous of an option. He may be a thief, but his dad's still in league with Maleficent, Mal thought. The odds of it getting back to Maleficent were too high if Mal talked to Jay. There were only 2 options remaining to her. The one Maleficent was considering was probably the most dangerous option she had. She'd have to talk to Maleficent about her father face to face. It was a lot safer than Maleficent finding out Mal was asking about her father around the Isle. "Oh gods, please let her be in a good mood," Mal thought as she entered the room. "Either that, or please make it so I can easily access the exits if needed. I don't think I could take another punishment right now." Mal knew where Maleficent was. It was the same place she always was. Her little throne room where most of her plotting was done, and where she would meet with her allies, like Cruella and Jafar. Mal didn't fully understand why her birthgiver had paired up with Cruella over other magic users like Madame Mim. The hunters had their gang, so Why not make it so Maleficent's gang was only magic users? Besides, Cruella's son was a wimp. Only 3 years old, but still cowered like a baby. It was almost pitiful. The Isle was going to swallow him whole if Deville didn't toughen up. Thankfully, Maleficent was alone when Mal entered the room. "Mother," Mal said, thankful she hadn't called Maleficent by her name again. Her arm may have healed, but her ribs still smarted. "What?" Maleficent snapped, turning towards Mal, who had grown silent upon hearing Maleficent. Maybe this wasn't such a good idea after all. "Spit it out!" "Why does Lord Hades know my middle name?" Mal asked, the question coming out of her mouth a bit faster than normal, as to prevent her losing her nerve. "How should I know what that has-been god knows or doesn't know?" Maleficent scoffed. Mal took a breath and looked at Maleficent. "It's just, Mother, there's only 3 people on the Isle who would or should know my middle name. You, me, and my father." Maleficent's eyes flashed, and Mal backed up a tad, making sure the doorway was still right behind her in case she needed to make a quick getaway. "I told you to never mention that weakling in my presence," Maleficent growled, leaning forward in her chair. Mal nodded. "Yes, Mother, you did. But when I have the Lord of the Underworld knowing information that only my father would know, I thought I would ask. Uma knows who her father is. Don't I have the right to know who mine is too?" Maleficent seemed to still, and Mal wondered if she'd stepped too far over the line. It was risky enough to talk about her father, but to tell Maleficent that Mal had the right to know her father's identity. Maybe Uma will say some nice words about me when the dragon kills me, Mal thought, nervously eyeing Maleficent. "The only thing you have a right to know is that your father was a weakling who walked out on the both of us," Maleficent told her, the tone of her voice dangerously low. "He didn't want you. If you want to be a weakling like him, and believe whatever stupid fantasy you've concocted in your head, have at it." "Fine, Mother. I will," Mal shouted, her own nerve startling her, and turning on her heel, surprised Maleficent had decided Mal needed to learn another lesson in respect. Then again, there was always the chance Maleficent would teach her that lesson later. Heading back out to the Isle, Mal sighed. Maleficent had been a bust, but what had Mal really expected? For the older fairy to sit Mal on her lap and tell her that yes, the Lord of the Underworld had been her father. Honestly, I think I might have to run out of the room screaming if that had happened, Mal thought with a frown. Maleficent on a rampage, ranting in anger? That Mal could handle. But the thought of Maleficent being nice, even in her own head, was truly terrifying. There was only one option left now if Mal wanted to know the truth. The problem was, she'd have to go to the man she had accused of lying to her. Gods don't take insults well, Mal thought, as she made her way along the path back to Lord Hades' restaurant. I mean, Athena turned Arachne into a spider because she claimed she was better at weaving and spinning than her. What would Lord Hades do to me for calling him a liar? The only silver lining Mal could think of was the fact that there was no one in the restaurant at the time Mal had said that. No witnesses meant Lord Hades wouldn't be too rough with his revenge, right? Plus, the barrier meant there wouldn't be a chance of fireballs. Mal could easily escape if Hades tried to lay a hand on her, but fireballs would allow Hades the luxury of long distance. Opening the door, Mal wasn't surprised to see the restaurant was dead inside. It had only been 3 hours since she dropped off the delivery. Despite the fact that it was called the lunch rush, there was never really much of a rush. Dinner was the more popular time, considering most villains hadn't eaten all day and were usually desperate. "What can I get you?" Hades asked from the counter, his back to Mal. "I'd settle for answers," Mal answered softly, and Hades turned around to face her. "Mal!" Hades asked, as if shocked to see her in the restaurant. "You already dropped off the delivery. You don't have to stop by here twice in one day." Mal couldn't help but smirk a little at that before sobering back up. This was her one chance to find out the truth. She didn't want to blow it. "Can I ask you a question?" Mal asked, walking closer to Lord Hades. "Well, technically, you already did, but you can ask another one," Hades told her, leaning on the counter. He smiled at her. He had been worried that he had blown his chance of building a relationship with her after the whole middle name debacle 4 weeks ago. Mal bit her lip in thought, trying to figure out how to word her question in a way that wouldn't wind up with her being smote.
Mal, you can ask your question,
Hades said with a small smile, and Mal sighed. She gathered up her courage and asked the question that had been growing in her mind all day. She didn't care if it gave Lord Hades something over her. At this point, she just wanted an answer. Are you my father? End of chapter. Hi guys, hope you enjoyed that. Sorry if my voice is a little bit quiet. I had to be a bit more careful with my recording today. Anyway, what a chapter. Oh, Mal. Hades, sweep that girl into your arms and give her a hug and get her away from that dragon. Oh boy. Anyway, you guys know the drill. Like, comment and subscribe and hit that bell to get notified whenever I upload a new video. Have a good day, night, wherever time zone you're in. Bye my guys, gals and non-binary pals. I'll see you in another video. Bye!